You're listening to the Speaking Tongues podcast. I'm your host, El Charisse. Each week, I sit down to a conversation with multilinguals where we discuss and celebrate language, life, and culture through our own perspectives. Episode 98, Speaking Saint Lucian Creole. Hello, language lovers. Thank you for joining me for this episode of Speaking Tongues, the podcast in conversation with multilinguals. This week, I'm thrilled to share this conversation with Kimhia and Indira about their language of Saint Lucian Creole. Kimhia and Indira talk about the development and influences that have shaped Saint Lucian Creole, including grammar structures that have origins in Mandinka and Wolof. We talk about the history of Culture Day in Saint Lucia and the significance of madras. We talk about the grammar of the language and how it's structured, and we actually get to practice some of the Creole language. We talk about understanding the French language through Creole and the variations with other Caribbean Creoles, especially Haitian Creole. Kimhia and Indira tell us about their language academy and the importance of passing on the Creole tradition, as well as finding room to create new words in Creole. Diversions in this conversation include code switching and accents, Saint Lucian music, and what we can look forward to experiencing when we visit the island. Big thank you to Kimhia and Indira for this conversation and for sharing the language and culture of your lovely island with all of us. If you enjoy episodes of Speaking Tongues, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review the Speaking Tongues podcast on Apple Podcasts, and like and subscribe on YouTube so that other language lovers like ourselves can find the show. And if you've been a longtime listener of the show or even a recent listener, you can now support us on buymeacoffee.com. Links to all platforms are in the show notes. Okay, let's chat. Welcome back to another episode of Speaking Tongues. I'm here today with Kimhia and Indira. How are you both today?
We are good.
Yes.
Very warm.
Mm-hmm.
Very good.
I'm glad. I'm glad to hear it. Mostly that you're warm, because at the time of this recording, it's cold in New York.
Can't relate. We're in t-shirts and shorts.
Jealous. I like to start each episode with the same question, and that is, what is your first language and which languages have you both learned to speak?
Sure.
Do you want to go first? I'll go. Sure.
Cool.
You go.
Okay. She's such a kind sister, elder sister, you know. So I'm Indira, and my first language, I suppose, is English. But we grew up bilingual, being able to speak Creole, Saint Lucian Creole. And then I learned Spanish in school throughout my entire school career, essentially. And then I lived in Spain in order to improve my Spanish. And so I understand Portuguese and I can kind of communicate in Portuguese. But yeah, I would like to learn to speak Portuguese as well.
And for me, like my sister, grew up speaking English, but also bilingual. So I can't tell you at which age we learned Creole, but it's always been there and always been present. So English and Creole, but I learned French in school, but also Spanish. So I went to a language academy, or my school is called a language academy. And so you had to do a language during term time. And because I spoke Creole, they made me do French with the older girls. So I did my French exams earlier than everyone else who was my age. So I was forced to do French, but I wanted to do something fun during lesson time, during term time. And so Spanish was my language of choice. So I understand a lot more Spanish than I can speak, but I also recognize that that is a thing of confidence and not practicing it.
Definitely.
And so my Spanish isn't as, so I can watch films in Spanish, but tell me speak Spanish, I'm like, no.
Yeah,
No,
it's typical. It's so normal that happens, because when you have a lot more of like that input, but you don't have the ability to like, you know, to your like, I know for me,
Exactly.
like my brain just freezes. Like I can't even think of it.
It's a pressure thing. It's really a pressure thing. So I go into Spain with Indy. I'm like, so you do the speaking I can understand what they're saying, and I'll tell you what I need to say, because it's just, you get so nervous, and then every single word, suddenly leaves your brain, and you forget how to conjugate, and you forget all those things, and then you're like, oh, I actually knew this after the conversation.
And then you wake up at like 2 a.m. You're like, oh, I should have said that. Like,
yep. I hate that. I knew a better word.
So we're going to be talking about Saint Lucian Creole today, and let's talk about it. So you're both in Saint Lucia now, and
yes,
you are speakers of the Saint Lucian Creole, but tell us what you know about this language, how it developed, maybe some of the influences on it, and if there are any similarities to other languages spoken in the Caribbean or to any West African languages.
Yeah, so Creole is an amazingly beautiful, expressive language because it's an amalgamation of so many languages. I think it gives us the ability to kind of understand and to kind of, speak other languages a little bit easier. So, by the nature, by virtue of the history of the region, but we'll specifically speak about Saint Lucia, sorry, because there are different islands that speak Creole and they have different influences. Some maybe a bit more French based or a bit more, different region based, I suppose. So with Saint Lucia, a lot of the language, the flora and fauna in the language is influenced by the Arawaks that were first here, the American Indians, which is quite a broad term to use, but we'll use that just for quick understanding purposes. Is down to them. So, the fruits that we have and some of the animals and, different things of that nature is influenced by them. And then through colonization and under like the French, especially the French period, especially in like 1698, there are three main ethno-linguistic roots. So you have quite a few people were taken from Senegal, Gambia, and specifically there were the Mandinka and the Wolof. And then you also have in Angola, quite a few people were taken and they gave you the Congo people and the Ubundu people. And then in Benin, they gave us the Ewe folk people. And so language is quite an amalgamation of all those things. And Mandinka and Wolof specifically are huge influences to the grammar and the syntax of the language. So for example, in Creole, we'll say chezla. So we have the noun and then we have your definite article. So the che, so we say cheddar, and that's specifically linking to Wolof. For example, tree in Wolof is gabla. So noun, and then your definite article comes afterwards. And then we also have like French vocabulary, and then we have certain Spanish words in there. And so it's just a mixture of loads of different languages and influences, which tells the history of the island quite beautifully.
How does that interact with the culture that we see in Saint Lucia? Like, where do you see those influences coming out in the culture?
I think, for example, we have Creole Day, Journée Creole, which is where you can see, for example, we always wear madras. And madras is quite common throughout the year. It's not only one for Creole Day, but madras, like the history of madras coming from India and, just the journey of that going through Portugal and then places and then to finally hit Saint Lucian, the different people that wore it. So that in what we wear, it's quite obvious that we're quite a rich people.
You can also see in like the design of houses and some like really old buildings and certain towns like Soufrière, the houses are quite old and they look like, and some of them have like colonial arches. So you can definitely see you can see those things within the architecture, I guess, of the place, and in certain communities more so than others. So places like Soufrière, if you go to the Mon, you could see like the old like British arches in the archive building, the National Archive building, and like you can smell it. Even like there's the Sir Arthur Lewis Community College, so it's one of like the two like post-secondary educations, and you can see again, is it like the building, the way it's made, the structure that like in ways shaped, the way that the bricks they've used, everything, it smells and looks very old colonial.
Interesting. That's really interesting. And I love that I like to ask these kind of questions because even though I do talk about language on this show, like I think it's so important, especially in parts of the world where people typically vacation and maybe don't interact with anything beyond the resort that they're on.
The beaches. Right.
That's one of my personal like gripes about these things, and that's why I like to particularly like highlight that if I can. So I think that's lovely. I think it's great to see like a Caribbean island, and Caribbean is not all the same, like people need to know that, but it's great to see how an island like Saint Lucia has this distinctive mix of the culture and the language and how it's influenced how people are today. I think that's amazing, and I want everyone to see that.
No, it's true. It's so important. The Caribbean has so much more to offer, and Saint Lucia has so much more to offer beyond honeymoon and the beach. And yeah, those things are beautiful. And yeah, we've been blessed to have the Pito and the Sulphur Spring and thing. But there's so much more, which is like so important that people do know. So it's amazing that you're doing speaking tongues, because even through listening to different episodes, I'm like, oh wow, I want to visit that place, and I want to see different places.
So I know that you're teaching the language through Two Saints Language Academy. Tell us about the grammar of the language. Give us some examples of how we're forming sentences, how you talked a little bit about the connection between Wolof and placing the article at the end, but tell us about the Creole language and some of the grammatical structure that's a part of it.
So at the Two Saints Language Academy, within all our lessons, we try to interweave grammar within there because, like we said, we both studied Spanish, and so we understand the importance of learning grammar, because grammar is literally how you personalize a language and make it your own. And so what I'll do is maybe run you through like some basic sentence structure. So I'll give you a few basic sentences and we can kind of just break down the structure of them just so we can understand it. So in order to say something like, my name is Kimhia. So I would say, nombre c'est Kimhia. So no, which is the noun, which is the word name. And then so we say name my.
So no moi.
So we do moi, which is so moi is the pronoun, as in so my, right? Or possessive pronoun. So name, possessive pronoun, verb, which is the word c'est, and then Kimhia, and then my name, which is my name. So no moi c'est.
No moi c'est.
Yes. So it's the noun, possessive pronoun, and then verb. Whereas in English, we would do possessive pronoun, noun,
verb. Yeah.
Verb.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes. So that would be how I'd say like my name is. And then to say something like future tense, like if you're using something in future tense, you would say, to say like I will learn, you would say moi kai apprendre. So possessive pronoun, the word kai, which is, sorry?
Oh, sorry, being your tense, sorry.
Yes, kai being your tense. And then apprendre, which is your verb. So we do pronoun, tense, and then verb.
Okay.
So moi kai apprendre.
Let me try that again. Wait, say it again. I want to repeat after you. I like to repeat after people.
So to say I will learn moi kai apprendre.
Yes, fantastic.
Yes, so I will learn moi kai apprendre. Yes, and then like she was saying earlier, to like, so if you were to include like, if you were to say something about, so I will learn the body. So now you know how to say I will learn, and now the word for body is corps.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And so the definite article we would add on the end of the noun would be koa. So you would say mwe kai apon koa, meaning I will learn the body, but it's technically I will learn body the.
Got it. Wow.
Yeah, it's honestly really interesting, like grammatical ways in which Creole is interweaved. But sometimes you find those, oh, you say you always put the verb after this, and then sometimes you're like, actually, wait, not necessarily, because I feel like in any language, there are always those variations.
There's
and
irregularities.
Things, yes, irregularities, things that don't necessarily fit the norm. And so sometimes you're like, oh, no, not this one.
What I think is interesting, like when I was researching for this episode and I was looking at the grammar, like on Wikipedia, there's like a whole page of this Creole grammar. And I was like, okay, I definitely want to ask about this. But I noticed that it seems to have like some influences from French, but like you said, with the Wolof influence and putting the article at the end, I think it's really amazing what people can do with language and how you can take a base from here and how you can just and it says a lot, I think, about culture. I think it says a lot, not just about culture, but you know what I really want to say, what it does speak to is the inventiveness of Black people and how we are the masters of playing with language. We are the masters of taking something and make it into our own and making the speech our own. So hearing this in Saint Lucia and knowing that this is what like our people can do is like,
no, it is honestly so amazing just to be able to see. I think I always say that the moment I really, really, truly started to put respect on Creole was visiting like one Martinique, but also Paris, and realizing I can understand everything that's coming out of your mouth. I speak Creole, and you're like, what? What is that now? You're not speaking a word, and I'm like, it's because I've taken something that is your own, and my people have made it their own. And so now it's like it's part of being a secret society. And so we all understand this thing, and so that is even wider than us, which is French, but they don't have the same. They don't have the same access to ours.
Right. So tell me about visiting Martinique, where there's also a Creole in Martinique. And, you know, I talked about that on a previous episode. So where are you seeing the similarities and the differences between the Creole spoken in Martinique and what you speak in Saint Lucia?
I'll definitely say that the Creole, from the interactions that I've had, is definitely more French influenced. Because their first language is French. And so like if we're speaking Creole and there's a word that I might not know, I'll fall back to English. And I'm including an English word into that sentence. But obviously with their Creole, if there's a word that may not exist in Creole, they'll fall back to French. And so that's how you see the French is a lot more influential within their Creole. But we still understand each other. We can still have perfectly succinct conversations where, you know, we can type it, we can actually speak it, and it's perfectly fine. But yeah, I think that's the main differences. And I think it's also very similar for Haitian Creole as well.
Yeah, I think what's really interesting, something that I've noticed in Haitian Creole is that whereas in Saint Lucian Creole, we don't really have the letter R. So any word that begins with R is generally an English word that we just say with an accent. So like the word radio, we just say radio. We just say it with an accent. Whereas in Haitian Creole, they'll put R's in certain like words. For example, the way that they spell Creole is different to us. They will type it as Kreyol.
Yeah.
Whereas we type it as Kweyol. So for their R sound, we use W's. For example, if you want to say like, I like you, in Saint Lucian Creole, we say moi aime ou. And in Haitian Creole, they say moi remel, if I say that correctly. But they'll have an r sound like coming out. So it's super interesting, like when we listen to, for example, like Jessie Woo or other Haitian speakers, like Karis Maggie has an amazing YouTube channel, which she has gone into like, she's interviewed different people who speak Creole, whether from Seychelles, from Haiti, Martinique, Dominica, Saint Lucia, and to hear the differences. And I think she also has an episode where she got all of the Creole speakers together. And it's beautiful, beautiful, beautiful to hear the differences, those slight differences, or even like intonations, or, you know, all that kind of stuff. So it's so beautiful to speak Creole and to learn more and to learn from different islands how they would say things. And so, yeah.
I think that's amazing. And I want people to know that, like, I think we have such negative connotations when, I'm saying we, not me, but as a society, in general, I think people have such negative connotations when they hear the word Creole, and they automatically say it's broken. And I hate that. I hate that, because there's nothing broken about it. And just like I said before, if you have a people who were able to take what is a quote legitimate language and mix it with another legitimate language, you know, and make it into their own, like, who has the power to do that? You know, someone who understands how language works. So, you know, I want people to recognize Creole languages as languages. And thank you for, you know, illustrating the differences in the region of, you know, on which island and how they speak differently and how people speak differently. Because again, I will probably say this 5 more times, but the Caribbean is not a monolith, and and it's important to recognize that. With your language academy, who are your students? How are you teaching the language, and like, how did you get started, and what was that kind of motivation for you to share the language in this way?
We first started Two Saints just as an Instagram page to put our creative endeavors together. And we were like, we want this to be like a really cool page where we speak with, you know, different people in the communities, in the diaspora, in the Caribbean itself, and just host different conversations, as well as, like, you know, having really prominent conversations that are happening in society at the time. But then we're like, of course, because this is a joint page, we want there to be something that is absolutely integral to our lives. So we started posting the Creole words and, like, you know, making them funny. And we're like, this is going to be like a fun way to kind of interact with Creole, as well as archiving the language, because I think it's so important to do that. And where Creole is such an oral language, we don't have a lot of archival material, like, you know, books, etc. Like, you can find any book you want in Spanish, but we don't necessarily have that accessibility, right? And so that was part of the decision of putting Creole on the page. And then by virtue of what we were posting, we got people messaging us like, hey, do you guys teach Creole? Because, you know, we're being very specific, like, this word is a noun, this word is a verb, this word is an adverb, etc. And people started messaging us, and we were like, no, we don't teach Creole. No. Like, nobody does that. Like, what? No. Teach Creole, no. And then more people started messaging us, and we were like, okay, Kimmy, like, I was like, let's consider this. We both have between us like 8 years of experience working in education, specifically teaching English and different maths, for example. But, you know, so we have the experience of teaching, and we understand the mechanisms behind teaching, and seeing as we speak Creole, we can, between the two of us, we can kind of figure out a way of combining those two things in our lives, and kind of formulating a course which can take someone up from no Creole and, you know, build onto what they would like to learn, essentially. And so it's been amazing. It's been a beautiful, beautiful journey. And like I was saying, because we don't have that many books and stuff in Creole, we had to teach ourselves how to read and how to write, because even growing up in Saint Lucia, we're not taught how to read or write the language. Like I said, very oral. And so that's also a benefit to the course, because we've learned it ourselves. We can then implement different like tricks and different like things which you can relate to, which I would like to say, and I'm not saying this because I'm tooting our horn, but, you know, it's always good to toot your own horn, but our students also say that it is super helpful. Different things that we've kind of implemented, and the way we go about, you know, teaching. with the building block method is like my favorite thing to say. So yeah, quite a lot of our students are diaspora babies, as we like to call ourselves. You know, we have students in the UK, in Canada, in America, and you know, we have one student whose parents are Grenadian. And we've got students who have
Trini heritage.
Yeah, Trini heritage or Haitian heritage or you know, and so it's been a beautiful journey.
That's wonderful. Do you feel like there was a point, or there is a point, or on the island at any point in time, that this Creole was maybe discouraged for kids to learn, or for people to go out and talk to one another in the Creole, like, you know, the usage of it? Was it ever discouraged in that way?
Definitely, most certainly. I think growing up, I can definitely look back at my childhood and feel just how Creole was presented and looked at, as in it was definitely looked at as a language spoken in rural communities. So if you don't live in the city, you speak Creole. Yeah, you made. That's how I felt when I was younger. You know, if you speak Creole, you're a little bit less than. You're not at the absolute top of the food chain in society. You're somewhere else, but you're okay. You're doing all right, but you speak Creole. Okay. Yeah, just not feeling as sexy. Like right now, I feel sexy speaking Creole. I can tell you that I feel sexy. But growing up, I didn't feel sexy speaking Creole. There's definitely been a bit of a change, a bit of a shift. I can see that, you know, more people are definitely trying to actively learn and make a difference in what they know and teach other people. But I definitely feel more could be done and should be done just for the preservation of the language. Like, first of being able to see it.
Right.
I feel like we're robbed of being able to see it. We don't actively see Creole on a daily basis. And I'm like, why do I have to see English everywhere? Creole is just as important. Everywhere I go, I'll see English words. And
signage is in English.
Exactly. Everything is in English. And I think it would be important just to put that respect on the language of it being present alongside English. So that if you go to like France sometimes, you'll see both French, and then after it, there'll be English signage because they understand that other people need to consume English. But yeah, I just feel like, especially for maybe like the older people maybe like my great-grandmother's age, they would mainly speak Creole. And so maybe them just being able to see that and see themselves reflected that way might do something for them. Because I also feel like maybe their mentalities haven't moved and shifted as much as ours have. And so maybe them being able to see that might actually uplift them and
give a sense of pride.
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought that up, because I usually like to ask that question, like, where do you see examples of Creole language in, like, just walking around, like out on the street? Like if I went to Saint Lucia and I was, you know, off the resort, hopefully.
Please go off the resort. Please do yourself that favor. I'm off the resort.
I'm hanging with people. I'm getting to know like what's really going on in Saint Lucia. Like, what language am I seeing signage in? And if it's English, like, is there anything you see that represents the language? Is it in, you know, maybe like restaurant menus? Is it in music that you hear from a radio? Is it graffiti? Is it like, where is it? Does it exist?
That's such a great question. Like we said, there's not a lot of official signage in Creole. The Folk Research Center, they're doing work to kind of, you know, propaganda for that. And, you know, we have our sustainable development goals, for example, in Creole, but that's, again, very specific, very niche kind of thing that isn't every day. If you're walking on the road, you're going to see, you know, sustainable development goals. It was actually last week that I learned this. We went to an ATM and there was an ATM which gave the instructions both in English and in Creole.
It's the only one. I've gone to so many and it's the only one that gave it in both. So it went in English first And I found that, so I was like,
And that was so beautiful to
That's
hear.
major.
Right. And I can't wait. Whoever said, yeah, let's do this. I can't wait for that idea to be expanded beyond that ATM and then beyond that medium. So that, you know, for example, as soon as you get off a plane, I would love to see, you know, go left or go right in Creole, or welcome in Creole, you know, all those things, baggage claim. Of course, we might not have those baggage claim because, you know, our ancestors were like baggage claim. But you know,
but I
things
also
like
feel
that.
like there's room for the language to then develop to include things that are now prominent today. So
absolutely
finding a word for baggage claim.
That's true. And I like that because I wouldn't have thought of that as you said baggage claim, but as soon as you laughed, I said, yeah, like there's a lot of space for technological words and for things that have advanced. And so, you know, you're part of this movement that's pushing for the language to come to the forefront. So, I mean, you too could be inventors of these new words, or you could be the ones who
Somebody said this last week and I was like,
you're onto something here.
I think if there's any place to start seeing it, it's an airport. An airport, because you have people coming from all over the world and you want them to realize right away, like you wanted to say like, welcome to Saint Lucia, like
this is who we are.
Exactly.
This is who we are. This is what's important to us.
Exactly. Oh, I love this. I really love this.
And I'm like, oh yeah, I do.
Tell me about, you know, I think in any society that is multilingual, there is an element of code switching or an element of, you know, mixing languages together. What does that sound like in Saint Lucia?
Okay, so in Saint Lucia, there are a few different accents based on like regional accents based on where you live or where you're from. So if you've been raised in the city, you have more what people call a yunk. And so a yunk is like, it's literally just the word yankin means that if you have an accent, as long as you have an accent, they'll say you yankin. And so there's a little bit more of a yank. Your words are more enunciated. I guess it's more quote unquote what we proper English, I guess, or the Queen's English, or whichever one it is. But there's just a different hint of an accent, almost as if you're Saint Lucian, but you've traveled a little.
I see.
However, if you live in a more rural space, then I guess you have, I don't know, your accent's a bit different and kind of sounds like maybe me. I don't know if my accent is that, but somewhere along those lines. However, certain jobs also call for certain accents in Saint Lucia. So if you work in like a call center, if you work in property, if you work at a bank, you definitely have a different accent.
Hospitality, I imagine,
one that
too.
Exactly. Yep. One that is maybe a bit more palatable for foreign ears, because I guess if you're speaking quote like regular, then you know, quote unquote regular Lucian, then you know we might miss a few pronunciations of certain letters and speaking slang, etc. However, yeah, just certain professions call for different accents in Saint Lucia. It's just how it works.
How is that viewed? I mean, is it encouraged for people to code switch in those industries? Is it demanded of them? Like, how do people feel about having to do that?
Absolutely demanded in certain professions. We have a friend who was telling us about a certain job. He can literally put on an American accent, and it's so interesting to see and to just listen, because 1 second he will sound like our friend, and you know we're used to his voice, and then 2 seconds he'll sound like this American, and I'm like, what on earth? And he was like saying to us, yeah, like that's how they all have to sound in this one place, and it's quite normal. And I think where tourism is so heavily the island's GDP is so heavily based on tourism, it's kind of affected the mentality of people, and it's kind of made it very normal to be more quote unquote palatable to tourists and to different people who aren't Saint Lucian, which is quite terrible. because I think it makes it seem as though we are less than, and we're less deserving of, and we shouldn't be as proud of our accents, of our language, of who we are as a people. And so, yeah, I think it's quite normal here.
Yeah, I think it was last week we were watching telly and there was an advert, and just the vocabulary, the accent in which he spoke. I'm like, the average, well, someone else mentioned that the average Saint Lucian wouldn't understand exactly what is being said in the advert. And when I really dissected it and listened to the vocabulary, I was like, why would you choose to use those words if you want everybody to access it and understand what you're trying to tell them? And it was an advert for like a cooperative, a co-op, which is literally for the people of the community. So why would you choose to use language that is so outside of us and something that is so far from who we actually are? Like, first off, you didn't deliver it in Creole because that's where the co-ops are mainly, it's the older generation who mostly go to co-op and actually use it because it's within their community. It means they don't have to travel out. And I was just like, you have missed the mark. You have missed the mark entirely, but okay.
For people who want to hear Saint Lucian Creole, where do we have representations of that in the media or in music, in books? I love books, so poetry even, or art. Like, for people who want to hear it, to experience it, to see it, is there anything you can recommend that people can look into?
1000%. So I think it's so amazing. But if you go onto YouTube and you type in Chekapesh, which is CheCampeche, it was this theater production which used to happen back in the day, and it was all in Creole, and they had loads of different plays, and it used to be just so funny. And we used to get the DVDs, they be on stages, and it was all theatrical, and then someone would video it, and we'd literally import the DVDs to the UK, and it was so like highly anticipated that we'd watch Chekapesh and sit around like as a family, like our extended family would come over so that we could hear Creole and have jokes in Creole and them kind of things. So that's been a huge and pivotal media and form of Creole growing up, and even to this day you can still go on YouTube and find it. And then we have amazing musicians now. There's Jelani Ish, there's Pilot 758 who sings in Creole. He makes love songs in Creole, which are beautiful. If you want more soca and Denry segments and them kind of whining songs, you might have Moto, you might have Black Boy. So am I thinking of any other musicians?
There are loads, like Big C.
Yeah, Big C, Twaka, Ezra, The Fun Machine. There are so many musicians who do intertwine Creole and English or only sing in Creole. There's Quayle Setley C, who used to be a musician, and now he disseminates information on Creole online, and he has a few books, like if you want to learn really quick phrases, like Creole for Busy Folk, and he has a really good like interactive page, and he makes these amazing cool short videos explaining certain things.
It's kind of along the same lines of what we are doing, which is amazing. So I've definitely felt like, oh yeah, this is how you see this, or the way that he's just presented certain information has been really amazing. To see Creole presented in that way.
Yeah, there's also a kid's book called Saxa, which I got for our nephew. And he's not a nephew, he's our cousin. He feels like he's our nephew. And it teaches little kids animals in Creole, and it's a little coloring book. So there are like little things that you can find. There's the Folk Research Center in Saint Lucia, where you can go and find information, books in Creole. You can hear different things. Huge musician back in the day, Sesen.
Just on discount.
Yeah, and currently her house is being transformed. Her old house is being transformed into a museum. And then beyond that, we also have the dictionary.
Yep, we have the dictionary, which was edited by David Frank in 2001, which was commissioned by the Ministry of Education in Saint Lucia. But there's also a Dominican dictionary, which is very similar to ours. There are PDF versions online. So if it's a thing where you're like, oh, I don't want to carry a book, I have mine on my phone. And if there's a word that I know, I'll like spell it out and then I refer to my dictionary. Am I spelling this correctly? Because obviously it's not a language I was raised speaking. So I always refer to writing. So I refer to a dictionary very often. But the Dominican one is just as amazing. There's also, I think Dominica has a page that they've done that is solely based on Creole and the teaching and learning of Creole. But if you just know the right places to look as well, sometimes, like I found a few of the books I'd read as a child online, and there are just a few PDFs in certain pockets of the internet that would teach you how to read and write in Creole, but also some short stories like Cope Lape. So if there's anybody who grew up learning or reading the Cope Lape stories, which are actually tales from like African folklore that were adapted, then some of those have been available for me to download in PDF, but Two Saints also has them somewhere. We have them archived. So if anyone does ever want access to them.
Yeah, our page. Go on our page to hear Creole.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
Quick plug.
I love that there's so much. I love that there's so much. And in asking that question, I ask because, again, I'm going to lean on this a lot, but, I think that people have the wrong idea about the Caribbean, and it's very easy to just, I saw somebody, not saying any names, but I saw somebody the other day they were vacationing somewhere in the Caribbean. I'm not sure where, but I know it wasn't Jamaica. And then, the person came, I know it wasn't Jamaica. The person came back to wherever they're from. And then, the very typical, like, take me back post, like a week later after I get back.
Yeah.
And it was showing a playlist and the person was listening to like Bob Marley. And I was like, but you weren't even in Jamaica. Like, did you bother to even listen to local artists or notice that like reggae is not soca, is not ska, is not, you know what I mean? Like, it's not dancehall. Like, people don't.
No, but it's true, and it's such an important conversation to have because it pertains to a wider conversation about how to travel sustainably and ethically. And one of the ways to travel ethically is to be immersed in the local culture, immersed in yourself, going out there beyond your inclusive hotel, closed circuit environment where all the money is generated and kept by, a certain pocket in the society. There's a local woman down the road selling lababad. She needs money just as much. Why don't you go out and find out, hey, my lady, what's the lababad? What is lababad? What is that juice that you have there, which is $5? Like, I want to give you my money rather than staying in a hotel where it's orange juice imported from America, and then where there's that money staying and it just stays in a circle and it doesn't benefit the locals, the local economy, the local people at all.
Yeah.
So maybe a few weeks ago, I had a very touristy experience of Saint Lucia because my partner was here. And so we did a bit of everything. So we did an Airbnb where it was just us, but then we came here to my community. And then for his final week, we went to a resort. And as amazing as it was, I didn't have to cook and didn't have to think about what's my next meal, saying all of this, sourcing all of those things out. But I just realized the whole repetition of I think on our second day, someone was complaining about having to drive around the island. And he was like, all those curves and the bends and everything. And I was like, sir, can you just appreciate that we have roads? Because to build roads on such like steep hills, etc., it must have been such treacherous and hard work. So appreciate that we have roads that are drivable. And stop complaining, but also go out and actually visit the island. Because you just judged it based on maybe a road you've experienced elsewhere. And he was just complaining about so many small things that I was like, stop complaining.
Mm-hmm.
Stop complaining. And I realized I was being very defensive. So I'm like, this is my island, and I will not have you sat there chatting about her. Like, she isn't the most beautiful and precious thing I've experienced. So no. But it was also just seeing how like other people were coming and just staying in the hotel every single day and not venturing outside. And I'm like, there's so much more to this, to her, to the island than where we are right now. That is just so catered to just the experience that you want to have right now. But it was really nice interacting with like the staff. So a lot of them, once they found out I was Saint Lucian and I spoke Creole, they were excited. They remembered what drink I was having every single time. I didn't have to go back and be like, yeah, I want the bounty lime with the orange juice and splash of grenadine. They knew exactly. Oh, you're the Lucian. Oh, you're the one from Miku. And like they started passing it on to others in the hotel, like, oh yeah, she's Saint Lucian. So when people would approach me, like, oh, you're Saint Lucian. I'm like, yes. And then we speak maybe in Creole, because I also learned that a lot of them aren't allowed to speak in Creole whilst they're on the job. And so we'd hush speak in Creole, which is amazing.
Not allowed to.
No, practice your language.
Wow.
Yep, not allowed to. Which I think someone was complaining because they're like, well, the guests are allowed to speak to us and, speak in front of us, to us, and like in their language if they don't speak English. And yet I'm not allowed to practice what is innately me. And I had an issue with that. So when I could speak to them in Creole, I would.
Thank you for that. That's a big issue. So thank you for, what you did for them and that makes me angry.
So angry. I think it just continues to a wider conversation on like shame and catering, like this catering mentality to others and not prioritizing what we have, which is innate to us, and what that says for our history and also our future if we are so catering to others. Where do we fit in? Where does our story get told? From our perspective, from a Creole perspective.
I talk about that a lot, just the commodification of the Caribbean and how it continues to be exploited and continues to be exploited for labor, and that's why I keep banging on this topic. Like, it's not just, people are not there just to serve you. So we're going to Saint Lucia, and we are not staying on the resort because there's things we got things to do, and we probably only have, if we're coming from the States, we probably only have 5 days vacation. So
that's it.
What are we doing? Where are we going? What do we want to see? What do we want to eat and drink? Tell us some things that we have to do when we go to Saint Lucia to experience the culture in the best way that we can.
So first off, I think it starts on what kind of stay do you want to have. And I think, for example, you can have, like Kim was saying, you can have an Airbnb experience. If you were to go to Miku, which is our community, you can have a super luxurious stay if you wanted to stay in this super lovely overlooking the waters kind of place. Or you can also have like a toned back normal, I put quote unquote normal, like a regular, house. You can have different stays. I think that's what makes it so wonderful, that you can have luxury, high end, but not go to a resort where your money stays in that closed circuit. Or you can have, a bit more leeway, a bit more flexibility. In terms of experiences, say if you wanted to go on hikes and go find waterfalls and all those kind of things, we have different companies. Like there's Amazon Adventures, there's Tropic Trails, where there are guides that take you deep in bush to find these absolutely picturesque waterfalls, and the water just feels so good. Eating, for example, there are so many places you can eat, so many places.
I will say this, Saint Lucia, I feel like it's always the little random little shacks you pass on the side of the streets that have some of the best food. So they're called something called a cabaret, is more like where you go to drink rum, but it could also be called a little cabaret. Where it's just a little shack on the side of the road.
Or a man selling cassava.
Yes, or somebody just selling their food on the side of the road. Stop for them. Stop. Go in. Just try it.
It's gonna be
It
great.
will bang. I promise you, it will bang. So yeah, definitely stop for the little shacks, and especially if you see there's a queue of people outside, trust the queue. Trust that there's a queue.
What
for
kind
a
of
reason.
food are they making at the shacks?
Normally we make a lot of like bakes or floats. What's another one for bakes? I'm missing. Fried dumpling.
Fried dumpling is a little bit like heavier.
Stodgy, yeah.
Bakes don't really have a filling in them too much.
So yeah, we have bakes, floats / fried dumplings.
You might get a fried chicken, a fried fish.
So you get a lot of like fried chicken, fish,
grilled, barbecued.
Yeah, chips. There's always chips or fries. Yeah, normally dal. So it's like for the vegetarians, which is us. So all we eat is dal every day. So it's just split peas and like this lovely dough. It's just beautiful.
It kind of looks like an empanada.
Yes.
But also like I also think that there's a beauty in that, like you can go to a shack and come out with a full plate of food. So you have your rice, you have hard food, which will be like your plantain, your sweet potato, yam, dasheen, and then you have like your main meat, which, you know, if you eat meat, it might be your fish or whatever, or if you don't, like it might just be soya chunks or nothing. And then you have peas on the side, and then you have another side. You maybe have like a lasagna, and then you have salad, and then, you know, and you come out there paying $15.
Saint Lucia is land of sides. That's all I say. Land of sides. Like there's 5 sides for every single meal so it's like 5 sides and then your meat. And I love that because we don't eat meat. It's amazing that we can just go to any restaurant and we'll have a full plate of food because it's mad sides. And it's beautiful, and I leave there full.
What about some like cultural like heritage expressions? Are there like carnivals? Are there live music? Is there like where do we have those, and where do we see those types of celebrations?
You want to take it away?
Sure. So Carnival, yes, we have Carnival. We have one of the best carnivals. Absolutely. It's literally been coined like the best carnival after Trinidad in the Caribbean. It's amazing. Saint Lucia is infamous for the jazz festival that happens yearly. And I mean, beyond jazz, it's like, you know, it's a week of celebrations that, you know, incorporates poetry and music, and there are like little kids tents and that kind of stuff. You can go to like the National Archives and find out historical things. I can't think of anything else now. I'm on the spot.
We also have things like Creole Day.
Yes.
Creole. So you definitely have like live music. So like in different communities, a lot of like live drumming. But that's also Creole Day in itself, and Creole Month is also, I guess, a bit of a cultural aspect to us. And so I think it was Saint Lucia that created Creole Day. It's a Creole week where we actually celebrate the language in October,
as well as our history
and our history.
Even Independence. Independence is the 22nd of February, and there are celebrations. There's pass the baton going throughout different communities. There are different days for music, poetry, different celebrations happening across the island.
Yeah, like December 13th is our National Day. And there's normally something we call a Siwenal, so which is like live music. Oh my gosh, I experienced it for the first time last year, and I cannot explain how joyous it made me, and how beautiful it was to also just see like how the older people were interacting with it, but also how the young people interacted with it. So it was literally these maybe about 15 people from a certain community. They all got on the back of the truck with like drums, horns, and like pans, pots and pans, and like maybe like empty bottles that they put stones in there to like rattle. And so they were just like making music like that and just driving through their community, and then came to my community. And it was so beautiful. People stepped outside of their houses to hear it. And it was like 6:30 in the morning, ridiculous hour. But everybody was just so joyous, like seeing the little kids with their old, like with their grannies just outside jumping and singing. And I was like, oh my gosh, look at that. But also seeing like the older people from my community that are known and like who are maybe like, the last of their generation. So there's this one a teacher. She came out of her house and everyone's like, this might be the last one that she sees, but she was so joyous. She decorated her house in like all the national colors. Gosh. And she had like things draping and it was beautiful. And I was just like, look at that. Look how happy this is making and it's part of our culture, to go around playing music on that day. And it was honestly just one of the best experiences I've had here since being here in the last 4 months.
That's so beautiful. I'm glad you had that experience.
No, I'm so happy.
I think it's really a blessing to be able to relearn your culture. And, a few guests have said this before, like when you're young, you kind of just want to fit in. So you don't always fully embrace your culture and fully embrace what it's about. So to get to that point and be old enough and mature enough to interact and to have something that's decades, 100 years old, to have it mean so much to you in the present day and know that you can pass it on to, your children, your nephews, nieces, whomever. And I think that's really such a blessing because you're part of what's keeping the culture moving forward. You're part of pushing the culture forward. So I personally thank you both for what you do. And I think that it's just so powerful and so important. So I hope that you both keep up the amazing work that you've been doing.
Thank you so much. No, that means the world, honestly. Like, touches my heart.
If there's I asked you earlier about your language academy and your Instagram, but please let us know where we can find you online and how we can get in touch with you.
Sure thing. So if you go onto Instagram, you can find us at Two Saints, which is TWOSSAINTS. That's like our kind of main social media presence. We also have a website, and that's www.twosaints.com. Again, TWOSSAINTS. And on our website is where you can find like all the kind of cool stuff that we kind of do. We're also hosting a grant for Saint Lucian creatives. So that's where the application form is. If you're a Saint Lucian and you reside in Saint Lucia, we have a rolling grant for the next 4 months, which is where you may be the recipient of $500 in order to continue your artistry. So that application form is on our website. That's the only place it can be found. And so yeah,
have a newsletter on there.
Oh yeah, we also have a newsletter, and that is super cool because we get loads of movers and shakers across the Caribbean and different places to kind of contribute. So it's a bi-weekly newsletter, and every week is a different topic. And they write about whatever it may be, and then we have a Creole section, we have opportunities in there, and it's just like a nice like intimate space to be a part of. So you can also sign up for our newsletter via our website.
Amazing. I'm gonna sign up, so I encourage everyone else to sign up, and I will leave links to your social and to your website in the show notes for this episode so that people can contact you right from there straight away. Thank you both again for this conversation. That's so much fun talking with you and learning so much about your language and your culture. This has been a lot of fun.
No, thank you. Yes, honestly, thank you. Because speaking tongues is literally amazing. Thank you. So we're so grateful to be on here.
Thank you. I like to end each episode with the same question, and that is, do you have any jokes, popular sayings, tongue twisters, cool slang words, idioms, words of wisdom, or words of advice in Saint Lucian Creole to share and to teach us?
Okay, so we have 3.
Oh boy, okay.
Can I do my favorite one?
Yeah, go on.
All right, my favorite one, which is one I learned since being here this time round, and I was like, you know what? That is it right there. That is it. That's what I'm going to carry through life. So I'll just say out and then I'll break it down. So sa zie pawe che pa fe mal. So sa zie pawe che pa fe mal, which means what my eyes don't see won't hurt my heart.
Oh.
So if I'm not seeing you commit this action, how can it hurt my heart? I didn't see you do it. How my heart gonna know? So essentially, that is my favorite one.
Yep. There's another one. It's like a little joke that we have. Like, for example, if I've given Kimhia a packet of popcorn and I turn around and I'm like, oh no, actually I want the popcorn back. She might say to me, no, say Boje. Like, she'll ask me, like, is your name God? Like, you give and you take back. Like, what? Why are you trying to be so all-powerful and give and take? You already give me the thing. Allow me to have it, enjoy it, experience it, don't take it back. Right? And then the final one, which I love, and it's an amazing, what do you call those?
In India, a proverb?
A proverb, yeah, is Glo pakamute mon. Glo pakamute mon, which is literally translates to water doesn't go up a mountain, which is kind of like, if something has already happened, allow it to happen as it has, because it is what it is. The water will never go up the mountain. It only ever goes down.
I love all three of those. Deeply. Love all three of those. Teach me one of them.
Let me go back over because I feel like that's really easy to say for the time.
Yeah. So Glo, Paka, Mute, Mon. So Glo
Paka, Mute, Mon.
Yes. Amazing.
Hey.
I'm on my way.
You're like booking that ticket as soon as this is over.
I'm ready. No, I'm ready. Like, you painted such a beautiful picture, such a lovely picture of Saint Lucia. So hopefully it comes across from our listeners too, and they will also be booking.com, getting ready to
I hope so.
getting ready to experience the island. Thank you so much again for this conversation. Thank you so much. Before I let you go, in Saint Lucia, when people have been talking for a while, such as we have, and they are about to go their separate ways, don't think about this too hard, but what is the best way to say goodbye?
Plita. I would say Plita.
I'll say Nukaiwe. Like, we will see. We don't really say like bye. We don't ever like close something off.
Yeah. Personally, I would say Plita because like she'd say Nukaiwe, which means we will see. I might not see you. So I'm saying later. So leave it a bit open, like later. Plita. Yeah, Plita. Yes.
Okay. And the other one is
Nukaiwe.
Okay. We got two options here. So
there you go. See, that's the benefit of having two of us. You got options.
Thank you so much again, and I'll be talking to you soon. Bye.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye.